you first meet a narcissist, they come across like they're your perfect companion, like they're your soulmate. They con you into believing that they're compatible with you, that they have similar interests with you, and they morph into the person you want them to be, that you need them to be. And usually they come at a time in your life when you're vulnerable, where you're looking for something, you're searching for something. And a lot of people look back on that time and that experience and that point in their life in retrospect and wonder, how is it that I was conned into this fantasy world with this person? And it'll probably surprise people who haven't been in a narcissistically abusive relationship to discover that a lot of people, once they get out of it, they'll tell me that they weren't even really initially attracted to that person, or that person wasn't typically the type of person that they would gravitate to or choose. But once the narcissist morphed into this other person and discovered what you liked, what you didn't like, and started mirroring the things that you did, your choice of words, your mannerisms, and all those different things, you get to a point where you start to form this connection, you form a bond. And before you know it, you go through the love bombing and you're in a trauma bond with this person. And that's the point where things start to get really difficult, because the narcissist will start to criticize you. They'll start to devalue you. And the natural inclination is to look at yourself and wonder, what am I doing wrong? How can I get this person to love me the way that they did in the beginning of the relationship? And so you try harder and you fight to get this person to change, and you start to lose yourself in the process of that fight. You bend yourself, you twist yourself, you contort yourself, and you end up being manipulated and maneuvered by the narcissist. They use you like a parasite. They use you to get their needs met. They transform you into a perpetual source of supply. And you think that you're fighting for the relationship when you're chasing them, when you're letting things slide, sweeping things under the rug. When they come back to you pretending like they didn't just do something horrible the other day and they pretend like nothing ever happened, you go along with it to keep the peace. Because you've learned, by being in that cycle, you've learned that when you try to fight and you try to hold them accountable and you try to get them to validate your emotional reality, that it's futile. And so you end up going along with them in their fantasy, where they can't do any wrong, they're always right, and somehow you're always the problem. And the result of being in that fantasy with them for that prolonged period of time is that you lose yourself. You lose yourself bit by bit. And it becomes harder and harder to function apart from the narcissist, because they're conditioning you. A part of what they're doing is conditioning you. Your nervous system is getting more and more dysregulated. And your source of dopamine, your primary source of dopamine, is the narcissist. So if you're in an argument with them, if they're stonewalling you and they're not giving you any attention, and affection, you go into dopamine withdrawal. You feel like you're dying. You feel like there's a physical pain. And, you know, some people even think, you know, maybe God is punishing me for, you know, mistreating this wonderful person. You start to make up all kind of things in your mind as to why it's important for you to reconcile with this person who you know is hurting you. And so you live in these two different worlds. You live in this world where the narcissist is this wonderful person, but you also live in this world where this person is hurting you and they know they're hurting you and they're never going to change. But the only peace that you feel within this hellish existence, where you experience this cognitive dissonance, which is the result of the painful result of two conflicting narratives being in your mind at the same time. The only refuge that you have is in this fantasy world, which is not true. It's a warped, distorted version of reality that the narcissist has created in order to maintain control over you and the illusion of superiority. But that world becomes more desirable over time than reality, because reality is painful. Reality represents this place where this person doesn't love you, where this person is hurting you. And this one person who you rely on for love, support, connection, and just to feel safe in your own body is a person who doesn't have your best interest at heart, who runs smear campaigns, who triangulates other people against you, who gaslights you. And so it becomes easier to live in the fantasy with them, where your sense of reality is continuing to dissolve within that world. It's easier to live in that world than it is to face the harsh reality of what's actually happening in that relationship. And that's where you experience betrayal blindness. You get to a point where you only see what you want to see. And that's when that shared fantasy really takes hold of you, and you experience blurred boundaries where your boundaries are absorbed. You don't have boundaries. It's like you become enmeshed with the narcissist, and you start to really see things from their point of view. You start to even criticize yourself in their voice. Their voice becomes an introject in your mind, where it's like they're not just with you physically, but they're in your mind, in your head, even when they're not physically present. And that's the hell that you experience in that cycle of abuse with the narcissist. So it's incredibly painful. It's incredibly difficult to break the shackles of the trauma bond and to see them clearly for who they really are. But it is possible. It is possible. And if you're at a point where you've been discarded and your world has shattered and you're wondering how to survive, how to go on, how to keep breathing, how to keep moving, know that it is possible. And you want to take it one moment at a time. And you want to put yourself around people who can help you navigate this new reality. You'll never be the same after narcissistic abuse, but you can put the pieces back together again.